good evening, everyone. Welcome. My name is Sarah Lefton, and I'm the Senior Vice President of Philanthropy at UJA Federation. I oversee the annual campaign, and tonight I'm very excited to have an incredible panel here with us for our Now You Know webinar on residential real estate sales during and after a pandemic, a topic I never thought would be a thing, but apparently this is where we find ourselves, and I think a topic that's very, very interesting to so many people right now. Many of you are familiar with UJA, some of you not as familiar, but United Jewish Appeal, UJA, is the organization that's tasked with looking at the overall health of the Jewish community in Toronto. And really looking at the biggest problems facing our community, the biggest problems of the day, or the biggest challenges that we're dealing with. 100 years ago, that may have been immigration for Jewish community or taking care of vulnerable Jews when no one else wanted to. Today we're looking at things like anti-Semitism, and now with the pandemic, we're looking at, vulnerable Jewish populations and Jews living in poverty in numbers that they never, ever, ever have before, and problems that are really looking quite different now that we've been in crisis for a number of months. We have seen since COVID hit a huge increase in people who are in crisis. We've seen an 80% increase in Jewish families who are calling Jewish family and child who are in financial distress. We know that roughly 44% of the Jewish community has been financially impacted by either job loss or has had a pay cut or has been terminated. Huge numbers, and people who have never ever experienced financial hardship before calling out for help. I mean, I'll give you one very shocking statistic. We have a donor hotline. People call to make gifts. I think many of you likely at some point have, called and made a donation. We've had almost 300 people who have previously been donors call us to look for food relief since this crisis began. Completely different than anything we've ever seen before. We've seen an 85% increase since COVID hit of individuals who are looking for help with addiction and mental health counseling. We've seen a huge surge in domestic violence and abuse. We've seen a 400% increase of Jewish families who are looking for interest-free loans through Jewish Free Loan, which is one of the agencies that UJA supports. The numbers are absolutely off the chart. And so we quickly had to come together as a community and look to see how we are going to be able to get our community through this crisis. And it really is an existential crisis. When I tell you Jewish camps, Jewish schools, the JCCs, our social service agencies, which range from Jewish Family and Child to JIAS, RENA, KCC, which was formerly Zarenu. When you look at all of these social service agencies, partner them with these big Jewish institutions like the day schools and so on and so forth, there is an existential crisis. We need to make sure that we can come together as a community to get us through the other side, to make sure that we are resilient. So the first thing that UJA did when we came to this crisis was we went into conversation with our partner agencies, and we discovered the shocking fact that in order to get our community through, we need to raise about $25 million over our normal $60 million campaign this year. And that's just to come through this together and make sure that on the other side, the families who are most in crisis get that support and that our institutions are able to survive. I'm very happy to say that we launched our campaign about 5 weeks ago. We've raised about 54 million of the $85 million, which is just a tremendous start, but it's the last 30 million that's going to be the most difficult. Thank you to many of you who have contributed already. And while the purpose tonight is certainly to hear about residential real estate and all of that, I really, I know that you're on this call because you also care about community. And I know our panelists care about community, are just tremendous supporters. We have a long-standing relationship with REMAX. We're so grateful for the ongoing support from REMAX Realtron. It's really been incredible what they've been able to do for our community. So I welcome them, and I'll turn it over in a moment to Jesse. Tonight, I hope you enjoy the conversation. I want to thank again our presenting sponsor, which is REMAX Realtron Realty, our webinar sponsor, which is Ernst & Young tonight, and our professional division sponsor, which is Scotiabank, all of whom have allowed this program to take place. So with that, I will turn it over to our moderator, Jesse Abrams, who's the founder and CEO of HomeWise. Thank you all for being with us. And if you do have any questions about the UJA emergency campaign, if there's anything I can tell you, don't hesitate to reach out in the chat or to any UJA professional. We really appreciate you taking the time to be with us tonight. Thank you. And over to Jesse.
Thanks so much, Sarah, and for all the amazing work that the UJA does. We're really excited to talk on your behalf today. So real estate has been a crazy topic so far, and we have three juggernauts in the industry talking tonight. Really excited to do that. I was here about a month and a half ago in the heat of the pandemic, and the conversation is going to be completely different a month and a half ago to today. So without further ado, first I'm going to introduce Barry Cohen. No one has actually sold more luxury homes in Canada over the last many years than Barry Cohen. I'm sure many of you have seen his signs all over town, so really lucky to have him here. Stephanie Pilarski has actually been 5 years in a row. She was a top 30 under 30 realtor in Canada. Really impressive, and she continues to build her base. And Alex Pilarski runs one of the biggest real estate brokerages in Canada, Remax Realtron. So we have a real treat tonight. We have a lot of really interesting conversations to go through. So excited to start that chat. And overall, we know the times have changed. It's COVID. The housing market has been completely different. As an example, in April, home sales were almost down 90%, but a lot has changed since then. I'm sure many of you might have seen some of your friends buying houses recently, maybe some new home sales. So I guess the $1 million question that everyone's always thinking about is now the time to buy a house? And Alex, I'd love to turn this to you first to say, should people start buying now?
The answer is yes. Of course, it's a qualified yes. You know, what we are seeing is that really the market has been paused. We started off the year in January, February, and the first 2 weeks in March, where the market was going up, prices were going up 10 to 15% on a monthly basis. Because Toronto is the fastest growing city in North America, we can't keep pace with the immigration coming in. Construction has been falling behind. And so a lot of people are taking this opportunity while the market is slower to jump in. So yeah, it is a very good time to buy.
Thanks. And Barry, would love your thoughts on that, both in the luxury and the other spaces, because you work on both ends of the rung.
Well, I think you know, it's also a good time to sell, because buying and selling is relative. I can't, you know, think of how many times Alex has reminded us, you can't play the market, right? So, you know, we are seeing people coming and selling and buying immediately, as opposed to waiting for, you know, an opportunity to pick up the benefit of the differential. So, you know, there's a window now. We don't know if there's going to be a next wave. I mean, they're all indication is there's going to, and nobody really should be predicting beyond the next 3 months, but this is a really healthy time to make a family move.
Well, you know, if I may just jump in, what Barry was saying is, if you buy and sell in the same market, is the safest way to go. You can't really play the market, and because no one can foretell the short future. Like, we don't know what's going to be tomorrow, but we know that 10 years from now, Toronto is just going to be a bigger city. There's no land, prices will go up. And if you can find the house that you want at today's market, then you should go for it. I think that's what you were saying.
And yeah. Well, sounds good, Alex. But I think what the audience should know is, you know, the province is behind this price appreciation, because the land around the GTA has been frozen. The province doesn't want to put more money into hospitals and schools, extend subways, and is putting it on the back of the GTA. So that's what's forcing single family detached homes up. God's not making any more land. So that's the reason for the 20-year run. And, you know, there's been some attempts through policy to, you know, change that with the foreign buyer tax and the mortgage rules. But you saw how quickly people adjusted. Okay, I'll pay this, I'll do this, I'll buy less. But people are needing shelter. So I think that, you know, look, forget 10 years, you know, look 4 years from now and say I was a genius.
Yeah, it's funny. There's the old adage, when's the best time to buy a house? And the answer is yesterday, right? And it's the key.
And when's the best time to sell a house? Never.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah.
And so it's so interesting to hear. And Steph, I know you work a lot in the 905 area. We've been talking a little bit about central core Toronto. How does Thornhill, Richmond Hill, and surrounding areas react right now?
So one of the really good tools that we use to figure out how the market is doing is what are the months of inventory? Meaning if there were no new houses to come for sale, how long would it take for the existing homes on the market to sell? So anywhere between 4 to 6 months, we'd consider a balanced market. Anything above 6 months, we would be looking at a seller's market, and anything below 4 months would be a seller's market. Excuse me. So below 4 months, seller's market. Above 6 months is a buyer's market. And right now in York Region in general, we're seeing just about 3 months of inventory. So we are in a seller's market still. Sale price to list price ratio is about 97%. So really York Region is a healthy seller's market right now. And, but what we do have to think about too is York Region is a very big place and it's community specific. So somewhere like King City right now, we have 8.5 months of inventory. So for Thornhill, that's closer to 2 months of inventory.
It's really interesting to hear. And when we talk about inventory and all the things happening in the marketplace, there's often some misconceptions. I know our company, we're a mortgage tech company, and we have tons of people who come to our site to figure out what they can afford, because everything in the media says you'll never be able to afford a house. And people quickly find out, yes, they actually can. So Alex, I'd love to hear, what do you think is the biggest misconception people have in this current climate or any climate when buying a house?
Well, I think especially in this market, because of COVID, they believe that houses are not selling. They believe that the market is dead, and that is just the furthest from the truth. What is happening, a lot of people have taken themselves out of the market because they want to see what happens. But still, there are a lot of others that have jumped in. Last month, 4,600 people bought homes. Now, it's not the 8,000 or the 9,000 that we wanted, but Jesse, now with the interest rates being so low, all of a sudden people who were could no longer afford to buy a house in January, February, March, all of a sudden because of the lower mortgage rates are now saying, wow, I can now afford the house. And in terms of expectations, yes, we don't have 15 offers on the same property. We might only have 4 or 5. Yes, a misconception is that there are no multiple offers. Good properties are selling quickly with multiple offers. So as a buyer, we're saying to them, now is a good time to buy because there's less competition. The prices are you're still going to pay a fair price, but there's less competition.
Yeah, it's interesting. Almost every single one of our deals closing next month are people who got pre-approved over the last 2 months who suddenly bought a house. And it's those people who've been jumping on the opportunities there. And Steph, I'd love to know from your end, have you seen that really been something on your end? Or are there any other misconceptions that you might see?
Yeah, I mean, prices are up over last year in York Region itself, 2 to 5%, depending on if you're a detached or a townhouse, whatever you are. But prices are up over last year. But one interesting thing that I have seen is that even though the prices haven't come down from last year, the rental prices have really suffered. So rental housing, condos the prices I'm seeing down 7 to 10% on rentals. So that's another misconception is I have investors calling me looking to, buy an investment property, but then they're seeing the prices haven't come down where they thought they were, yet the rental prices have come down. So that's been interesting.
Yeah, but sorry, go ahead, Alex.
Sorry, Jesse, what I was going to say is there are actually several markets. There's the investor market, there's the user market, there's today's market and tomorrow's market. And part of what we're seeing today is a lot of investors have bought properties and they were relying on Airbnb to fill their places. And so, yes, they were taking chances, they were getting higher rents, and now in a sense, they're paying for that. Foreign students who normally take up a lot of rental places have gone back home. But this is all temporary. So those people who have invested well, will have a short period of a challenge. but it's going to change. So my only point was that there are different markets, whether you're an investor or a user. But as Steph said, prices really haven't been impacted. In fact, in some areas, they're still continuing to go up.
Yeah, that's the most interesting conversation right now. Marilyn wrote a question in the chat saying that there was something in the Financial Post today about sales dropping by 12%. Evan Siddell from CMHC talked about an 18% drop. A lot of this is just PR and getting news out there because there's always people on both ends. There's a lot of news about prices increasing. So I on my end, I only see the amount of demand going up. We've had double the amount of people come to our site while COVID was happening. So clearly demand doesn't seem to be going anywhere, especially to everyone's points about immigration, changing demographics. Demand is still there. So Barry, do you see prices lowering the way some of these articles are saying?
Well, I'd be leery of predictions because I think for every prediction they get right, they get 5 wrong. So I remember Scotia Bank was first out, and of course I like their prediction. They said real estate will fall 3% this year. So they certainly addressed COVID, and it could have been a lot worse. And then next year will be up 12%. So, I mean, everybody is essentially wrong. And I guess today's market already speaks to Evan Siddell's prediction. Maybe in the long, maybe, did I lose you? There we go.
No, we're back.
You lost me. But anyway, so, you know, what do I see? Again, I don't want to be the population that predicts. I'm seeing, you know, a healthy market now, and that could change with the onset of a next wave. But I still come back to that real estate has to go up on a long-term basis because, as you said, Evan, well, immigration. What about wealth transference? I mean, there's so much money that has moved at every level, you know, whether somebody was in a modest home, they can now afford to give their kids an opportunity to buy in real estate. So I see that, you know, just in the last 40 days, the pent up demand is just, you know, it's evident. It's incredible. And, you know, there was a discussion about more real estate coming on, but the supply is still relatively low. So again, just be leery of predictions. I would think you should look at the statistics and read the numbers today instead of relying on the predictions of the future.
Yeah, there's a comment from Zane saying he doesn't see any less competition right anymore. We've heard stories of a lot of increased demand right now, and those bidding wars seem to be back. And another question that's in line with this, Steph, someone actually asked, are there areas around the GTA that are more hot or cold? Is that something that you might be seeing? Are there areas different? Because I know you work downtown Toronto and further north. Are you seeing there's areas that might be hotter buys right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I mentioned, King City, for example, has 8.5 months of inventory. Like that is crazy compared to, you know, in the city, which is 2 or less months of inventory. So certainly there are pockets where you can make a really, really good buy. But generally speaking, most of the city and most of York region is still pretty tight in terms of the seller's market. Anything under $1 million is moving quite quickly in York region, anything under $1.5 million in the city. But certainly there are opportunities to be had in different pockets.
So Steph, question, in King City where you have 8.5 months of inventory, are prices level, going up or reducing?
Probably going down right now. Like the sale price list price ratio is about 95%. So it's not horrible, but it's not like Thornhill, which is getting 102% of their price.
And it's interesting. York Mills, you know, has never had a great ratio either, but yet prices are going up.
Right. Yeah. But you see, what happens is when you have a lot of inventory, like King City, just as an example, is people get a choice of which house they want to buy. So if they buy the one that suits them the best, whereas in other areas, there's 1 or 2 listings or 3 listings, they're in competition. It's not the perfect house, but we got to jump in and get it because we got to buy something. So the prices may not be in the King City, they're down a bit, but certainly not to the extent that people would expect.
Yeah,
but yeah, that's one of those areas where if you've always wanted to live in a big, beautiful estate, a great time to buy.
For sure. And you mentioned the word inventory, Alex. There, almost 700,000 Canadians have deferred their mortgage during this time of COVID due to financial constraints, whatever it might be. That's almost 10% of mortgage holders. There's talk that 6 months down the road, maybe that is when we see some more inventory. Steph, on your end, how do you think this mortgage deferral situation could affect the market, if at all?
Yeah, I think my guess would be that they'll extend this mortgage deferral just like they did the wage subsidy. That would be my guess. But I think a lot of people are getting back to work. So there's going to be a number of people who can afford their mortgage again. And if not, I think that the banks are going to be working with these homeowners on how to figure out something in terms of maybe just interest-only payments. I think there is going to be a way that it's going to be figured out as opposed to just throwing people back right away.
Alex, do you have any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, thank you, Jesse. You know, we look at these huge unemployment potential and numbers, but we're forgetting that 85% of Canadians are still working, right? 85% of the people are still working. Yes, there have been challenges in some sectors, no question about it. But there are other sectors that are just have exploded. One of my favorite restaurants, at Young and Steele's, he says he's doing so much business from takeout. He had 5 chefs on Saturday night, and he stopped orders because they couldn't keep up. So, and he's considering, he says, I don't think I'm going to open the dining room anymore. I'm just going to do takeout. And so my point is yes, there are people who are having problems, but there have been other sectors that have opened up and people are doing very well. So 85% of people are still working. Canada, Toronto is still going to get 160 to 170,000 new immigrants coming from other parts of Canada. Maybe it's been postponed this year, but they'll come next year. You know, we need 60,000 new residential units every year, and we're only building 40. And that's why a basement apartment, if you're lucky to find it, is $1,400 a month. There just isn't the space.
Yeah, and with the new regulations put down by the U.S. over the last couple of days on immigration, we are probably going to see a lot of high-income people moving to Canada as well that are no longer going to keep their status in the U.S. Speaking of high income, Barry, you work a lot in the luxury space, and we touched on this briefly, but homes that are around the 2 million below range seem to have still lineups out the door to come see some of these houses in bidding wars. But how about the luxury space? $3, $4, $5, $6 million homes, is there, what's the climate there, and how do you see COVID affecting that, if at all?
Well, interesting enough, I just sold a home for 3.5 million and had 4 offers on it. I think, you know, the dynamic is a little different than a $1.5 million home is you can go several more rounds, whereas, you know, in that price level, we may only go 1 or 2 rounds deep. But, you know, homes are selling in some rare cases for over asking, but some are selling at asking. Most sell less than asking in luxury. A lot of that is because sellers have a different expectation in the market. Some of them are still trying to sell on the phone. But, you know, all in all, you have to realize that when these markets correct, luxury is the first to halt because it's most sensitive. It's also the last to return because it relies on the low end, you know, that real estate food chain where the $500,000 buyer is going to buy the $1 million home and the $1 million seller is going to buy the $2 million home, and it works its way up. So, you know, the luxury was kind of only kicked into gear, you know, 30, about a month ago. Whereas that $2 million range, you know, and under, people just, the minute they dropped the rates, people went and bought, you know, boom, boom, boom. I now can afford the home I couldn't afford before. And, you know, the different psyche with the high-end buyers, oh, wait a second, the feds are dropping the rates. Maybe there's going to be a recession. So there was a reflection and a pause. Now, I don't think that's in the minds of the wealthy. They've seen how the stock market has rebounded, and they're out buying real estate.
Alex, have you seen that on your end in the luxury space? What's your perspective there?
No, I think Barry capsulized it very, very well. Everybody needs the next step to go up. But there's also a lot of foreign buyers that are coming in, and we can't lose sight of that. And Canada is open to new immigrants. There are changes that have occurred in Hong Kong because of the 20-year lease is up, and the mainland China is taking more and more control over Hong Kong, subtly, but they're taking control. And I think we're going to see a large number of people coming back to Toronto. I believe we have 300,000 Canadian residents living in Hong Kong, and they're going to be coming back. Not all of them, but that's going to put pressure on homes here as well. So, you know, honestly, this is my 6th downturn. The first one was in 1974. I got into real estate in 1972, and by prices had gone up about 40% by 1974. And the government brought in the speculation tax, April 10th, 1974. Were you alive then, Jesse? I don't think so, no.
Forget Jesse, I feel 10 years younger.
So they wanted to slow down the market, and they killed the market. They brought in a speculation tax, which is if you bought and sold and didn't live in it, you had to pay 25% taxes. And that killed the market. And then we had, in 1980, the mortgage crisis, where interest rates were 22, 23%. And by the way, people were buying houses at 22, 23% because they wanted it. And then we had the dot-com bust in 2001. Then we had in 2008, the crisis in the States. So these things come and go, and people adjust. And we still have a good market. We are going to get through this. This is a pause. That's all it is. And people are waiting to get back to normal. Trinity Bellwoods proved it. First nice day, we had thousands of people out on the grass. People want to go back to normal. So the market is paused. I think those people who are jumping in and can afford the house and find the house they want are going to be very happy with their decision.
Yeah, and you mentioned new to Canada immigrants or people coming back to Canada. Roughly 45% of home buyers are first-time home buyers, and that includes immigrants. That includes millennials, Gen Xers, even Zillennials who might be buying their first home. Steph, I know you work a lot with the first-time home buyer demographic. What type of advice, if someone asked you one piece of advice right now for a first-time home buyer, what should they know in this marketplace right now?
Yeah, if what I'm telling people, and I'm getting a lot of calls from first-time home buyers, if you can afford it and the time is right, then go for it right now, because it is a good time. We're off of our peak of, which was end of February, early March before COVID hit. It's much easier to buy a home than it was then. And things could very easily get back to that craze that it was. So if they can afford it, interest rates are low. And if they plan to live in the house for 5, 6+ years, in the long run, it's a great buy.
Yeah, Alex, you mentioned the late 80s. Interest rates were around 18, 19% at that point. Now they're closer to 2%. So the cost of borrowing is exceptionally low. You could basically buy a bond to cover the cost. And that's one of the really interesting things we see in the marketplace right now. And Barry, on your end, just to flip from the first-time home buyer now to the empty nester side of things, there are people who have actually sent in questions like this, saying, you know, we're looking to downsize from our house to a luxury condo. It could be a $2-3 million condo. Is that a good idea right now? Is that something they should be looking to do? And what advice would you give someone who's looking to do that right now?
Just on that note, going back to what you said about mortgage rates at 18, 19%, you know, we were trading second mortgages at 21 and 22% during a boom. How interesting is that, right? But anyway, well, look at, I don't know. I mean, the empty nesters are, you know, are downsizing in size, right? But not in price level, right? So it's putting a lot of pressure on the young that want to buy condos. So the senior people are buying youth in their buildings and walkability and things like that. And these are, you know, these are the amenities that, you know, your peers want too. you know, they want the same thing. So there's a lot of pressure on the condo market. And I see the condo market continuing to grow because it's not filled with speculators. These are users. So, you know, if that's what you want, then, you know, buy the condo, because I only seen it be worth more down the road.
Yeah, I'm just going to add a question here from the audience that came in. And again, none of us have crystal balls. So a lot of this is years of experience from everyone on the group here. But Alex, I'll ask you this because you mentioned a lot of years of experience earlier. There was a question, is it better to buy now, do you think, or in the fall to winter time frame of this year? When should someone hit the market?
If my philosophy is, if you can afford it now, we've all said it, we can't play the market. Will there be a second wave? I would bet yes, of COVID. But at the same time, there are a lot of people who want to buy. Even in April, which was the worst month, we still had, I believe, 2,000 or 3,000 homes sold. So there will always be people buying. If you can afford to buy, as Steph said, the interest rates are so low. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but I know what's going to happen in 2, 3, 4 years from now. The people who get hurt are the speculators. And so if you can afford it, there's less competition today. As Steph again pointed out, it's still a seller's market. There is not enough inventory. And honestly, I can't see how that inventory is going to change until the government releases more land and allows the builders to build more homes. We're continually in a shortfall. We are building roughly 40,000 units a year. Out of those 40,000 units, 10,000 are homes and 30,000 are condominiums. So that's 40,000. We need 60,000 every single year.
And once you have your first child, a condo lifestyle isn't workable. So there's a lot of pressure on detached homes.
Yeah, there's a lot.
By the way, sorry, go ahead, Jesse.
No, there's a lot of people who've been living in 600 square foot condos or apartments for the last 3.5 months, working with their significant other 15 feet away from them. And we're definitely seeing a lot of people looking for a spare bedroom at this point.
Absolutely. And as they have kids, then they're moving north because they want more land, right, Steph? They want a garden. They want a place where the kids can run around. And that's why our new market office is hot. I mean, they're having an amazing market because people are moving into York Region. Any comments on that, Steph?
Yeah, no, even before COVID hit, I've been seeing in the past 2-3 years, more and more 20, 30-year-olds come into York Region. Whereas, you know, in 2008, when I started, all the 20 and 30-year-olds wanted to be right in the city. There seems to be a change in the feelings of what people want, and people actually do want to have more space, and they do want a bit of a quieter neighborhood. Many people still like the city, of course, but there are more and more people who are coming to York Region, young people.
And there's also now the talk, sorry, Jesse, there's now the talk that more companies are going to operate virtually. There's the talk. And honestly, I don't believe it, because one of the greatest things about work is the social aspect of it. And, you know, more ideas are gotten around the water cooler with people just bouncing ideas off each other than not. So I think we're talking, society is going to change and we'll never do this. You know, through all the changes, it's always gone back to the norm. We are human beings. We're social animals. We need each other. We need that interaction. We crave that interaction, and we're going to get it.
Yeah, it's been mentioned a couple times here about affordability and buying when the time is right. We always tell people, find out what your affordability is. And if you find the right house, you're not buying it for a 1-year plan. You're buying it for the long run.
Right.
And you always have to think of real estate as a minimum of a 5-year plan. And that's the best way to go into the conversation.
Sure.
We had a question from Ella, and it sort of alludes well to the next question, just about, is it a seller's market right now? She lives in the Bathurst Village area, and she says she's seen some homes up for a lot more time than she would have expected. So there are people who still want to sell their house, but they're wondering, should I put it up now? Should I wait a couple weeks, a couple months? Barry, do you think this is a good time to sell a house right now?
Alex, you used to rhyme off the stats on when it's a buyer market and a seller market. It's not the 50-50 ratio, but I believe that it is a seller's market and intensifying more. That will probably change as we get towards the middle of the year. You saw the reaction last week with a lot of listings coming onto the market, but that was as a result of the statistics that came out the week before, how wonderful it is. So I think, yes, I think there is a shortage of homes. I think sellers are doing well now, better than they've done in the last, preceding 5 months or almost 10 months. So yeah, and buyers too. I mean, is it a good time to buy? Well, you know what? You may be paying more next month, right? And if COVID does have a second wave, then you might say, oh, I should have waited till October or November. Nobody knows. Don't play the game.
Yeah, don't play the game. If you can afford it, buy it. It's a long-term thing. But Barry, just what you said just now, the reason why we're seeing all of a sudden more listings coming out is because people are coming out more. People are now saying, okay, I feel safe to come out. I think COVID is almost over. I can now go back to my normal life. I'm saying that's the overall feeling. So you're now seeing more people out than before. The weather has changed. So I think people are saying, hey, you know what? Now's the time to put the house on the market because I have a life and I want to get on with my life. COVID or no COVID, I want to live and I want a new house.
But it might be a very ignorant attitude because I don't think we're out of the woods yet, as everybody knows. But people are coming, Alex. They're showing up. I think the difference is now they are showing up with their face masks and gloves, but the
Correct.
volume has intensified. So there is the population, thank God, that's being responsible, but there is still this growing population that is not responsible. But you are right. People are fed up. They need to get out. Here's the good weather. And we're having the benefit of that, of course.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. My wife and I saw a friend of ours last week whose house had been for sale for 3 weeks, and he was lamenting about how it'd been for sale for so long. And I said, you know what? With the amount of traffic we're seeing right now, I bet you it sells this weekend. His house sold the next day. Now, correlation or not, we're seeing so many more people jumping into the market to both of your points and being a lot more cavalier about the state of the world because life needs to get back to a semblance of normalcy.
Right. But Jesse, what also happens is that there are people who say, my house is worth $1 million. And if I don't get $1 million, I don't care. I'm not selling it. And, the real estate agent says, well, your house is actually worth $8,925. But, the house that you think you're going to pay $1.5 million for is $1.4 million. So no, if I don't get my $1 million, I don't care. And so a lot of times stubborn people who are set on getting their price, and their price may have nothing to do with the reality. It's just a number they picked out of their heads. Whereas the people who are saying, if I buy in this market and sell in this market, I get to move on with my life. I get the house that I want, and we'll worry about how much this house is worth when I die and they take me out of here.
But there's another interesting thought that in these areas of multiple or homes that are getting multiple offers, or these areas where they're really intensified, I'm hearing people on my team that are competing with 7, 20, 25 offers. Well, that just means that there's one winner, but there's still 24 people that are out to buy the next house that comes on MLS, right? So the same thing with, the property I just sold the other day. There are 3 buyers that would buy on that same street in a moment. So prices have to go up, at least in the short term. I don't want to predict in the long term.
Right. Now, I was just looking at the Toronto Real Estate Board numbers for last month, May, and there were 115 detached properties that sold over $2 million. Like, I wonder if people know that statistic. There were 7 condominium apartments that sold over $2 million. Right? So sales are happening. And I think, Steph, in your area, in York region, it's a hot market as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, Steph, I was actually going to leave the next question to you on exactly that note. And let's talk more condo market even, because Airbnbs are not really happening right now. And there's a lot of investors who have been renting out their places, making a lot of money on Airbnb, and now they might have to convert to a rental. Is this a good time to maybe sell a condo? And is there opportunities in the condo market that you're starting to see in the York region or even further downtown?
Yeah, the market is tight for condos still. Like I have investors and there's just not those deals that people thought that there would be. So certainly, like I said, the rental prices have come down more than the sale prices have. And so investors are looking at things a little harder than they were before. But it's still a good time to buy an investment property. And in terms of selling, it's tight. There's not much inventory for good property. And to everybody's point, you still, in this market or any other market, you still have to be priced properly to sell. You can't be 100,000 over and just because it's a good market still sell. You still have to be within 5% of what you should be selling for.
Yeah, and Barry was mentioning, you have 25 offers, 24 buyers that come after. If you check the market every week, house listings skyrocketed over the last 2 weeks in every area in the Treb area. And the question a lot of people have as well is demand there. It sounds like demand is there, but Alex, have your phones been ringing a lot more recently from new potential buyers? And just thinking about your team, how have you seen just the atmosphere right now from a buyer's perspective?
There's no question over the last month, we have been going up probably about 15% of calls every single week since the start of May. So as the weather is changing, as people are getting more used to the virtual purchase and sale, more people are coming out on the market. I think last week we averaged about 650 appointments on our listings. So yeah, the calls are coming in, the appointments are being made. There's a huge demand, Jesse. As opposed to previous years where the market died because of the economy, here people were forced to pause their buying. So my analogy is it's like a tree has fallen over the river and the water is backed up, but the water is still there. And as soon as the tree is taken away, that water is going to come gushing out.
Wow,
because
Alex,
the demand
it only took you 40 minutes to come up with your first analogy.
The question is, did you like it, Barry? That's the most important thing.
The question is, when's the last one? Go ahead.
Yeah, but so the demand is still there. The demand has not diminished, and that's what's happening. And yes, it's improving daily.
Yeah, you mentioned technology too. Like we provide technology for realtors, and we've had so many reach out to us recently because of the changing marketplace in that area. How have you seen, Stephanie, I'll start with you, just technology change the way you sell homes? We've talked to realtors who are showing people 15 homes through Zoom and doing things in a different way. So for the people who are more comfortable to walk into homes versus the people who might prefer some more digital mediums, how have you changed your ways of doing things over the last few months?
Yeah, you know what? A lot of the technology that we're using now is the same stuff that I was using before, because a lot of the time I'm marketing not just to local buyers when I have a listing, but also to foreign buyers as well. So these virtual walkthroughs, videos of homes, are things I've been doing for several years. And in terms of the Zoom walkthroughs, I think generally people prefer to physically walk through. I think it's better if you can. So I think once things lift more, people are going to be going in person to walk through the houses, but it is useful for now to have it as an option to at least narrow down what you're looking at. But certainly in the long run, Zoom showings, I think will, I don't know if those will continue, but everything else, virtual walkthroughs, videos are all excellent tools that, I was using before.
Yeah, you mentioned you were using it before. I think a lot of realtors have started to take on a lot of these new technologies. Barry, how about on your end? Are these newer things for you and your team, or has this been commonplace for you for some time?
Well, I think it's been common in the lower end. In the luxury end, sellers had a reluctancy to have we call it a Matterport or walkthrough tour where you can navigate the mouse, because they're worried about you're just seeing too much, right? And, maybe for an ugly house, you don't want to see too much too. But what's happened with people sitting home because of COVID is they're spending a lot more time on the internet. And so, we see this, we see that, the time has increased, but we're seeing activity increase because they're spending more time on it. So, from my end, yes, Matterport tours or walkthroughs were out, but as Stephanie said, she'd been doing it forever. We're just getting into it in the luxury. And again, it might, as Stephanie said, it might fade once, there's a solution to COVID where people will want to touch and feel. But through these technologies, I am selling houses sight unseen in the lower end. In the higher end, what I'm having people do is the sellers are requesting, well, with COVID and all, why don't you make an offer based on what you saw? I want to see if you're serious and subject to your eventual tour, which in the past, we'd think that was a big waste of time, but it's amazing how many people won't do it. And it's amazing the people that are doing it are actually completing the sale when they do eventually look at the home. So I think, I'm a big fan of the Matterport tour. I think it cuts out a lot of tire kickers. So I think that will continue. I love Zoom calls. I mean, I never did that before. Well, my kids are always doing. And I say my kids, that's everybody who works for me. They're younger than me, they're the kids. But they're all
everybody's younger than you, Barry.
Well, you shouldn't talk.
Except me.
Exactly. And then, e-signatures. Like, I love it. I mean, it's given me, 3-4 hours a day. And where I used to feel that I had to come to your house and sign, and we had already negotiated the offer on the phone or face-to-face on Zoom, but I still felt like I needed to show up. Now my clients are saying, Barry, we want to get out. We're going to go for a walk. Just Zoom, DocuSign it to me. So I think that will continue. I don't think that will ever change. I think that will increase, and I love it. So staging, one more thing. Staging. Staging is a costly item, and I think that ultimately the sellers pay for it. They put it off to the agents. The agents say, yeah, I'll split it with you. I'll pay for it. But the commission rate goes up. I think it's a lot of, wasted money. I think a lot of people feel played by staging. I think a lot of people would disagree with me. This house is going to look a whole lot better. And so the buyer will be in a shock when they close the sale. What we are doing now is investing in virtual staging, where you send your photos out to a company and they will place the furniture. You can do a modern theme, you can do a traditional theme. And then when you arrive to the house, yes, it's a very different house. So we're creating little small easels to remind them of the pictures they showed on tour. Will that trend continue? I don't know. But these are good things.
I was going to say, Barry, that's an excellent touch that you've been using. And the other thing that I've seen Barry do is he's got properties that are land value only. And he has placed pictures of the property of what it could look like in the summer, in the spring, in the fall. So the buyer isn't just looking at a dead piece of land, he's looking at a potential of what this lot could bring. So Barry, that's excellent.
Yeah, bringing the photos out to the street. That's right.
That's right. That's right. The other thing that we're also doing, Jesse, which is working extremely well, we're doing about 50 virtual open houses every weekend. And we're finding that people are booking appointments to go through the homes virtually. And so I think, speaking to Barry's point of view, that this is allowing people, the serious people, to see the properties that they want and eliminating a lot of the tire kickers who had nothing to do. So they would book an appointment via virtual tour and see the homes. And then if the virtual tour that we're talking about is interesting, then they book an appointment to see the property. So the new technologies of even closing now, legal lawyers can now close without ever meeting the client. Everything is done virtually. It does a lot. And I think, again, we have a lot of foreign buyers being RE/MAX All of our listings are listed on Remax Global, which means they're seen in over 100 countries in over 134 languages. So we're really exposing property around the world. And now it's easier than ever before.
Yeah, these are all really interesting points just to see where the market's going, and just skipping to a slightly later on question, because I know this is a topic that a lot of people want to know about, is the cottage. I've heard the market is crazy in cottage land right now. Everyone's trying to find a place to escape to. Barry, what are you seeing in cottage country right now?
Well, I used to look at cottages as much like consistent with what's happening in the luxury market is what's going to be in the cottage. So cottages were that second home, the toy, the luxury. So, you know, if the market receded, then cottage country was doing a rotten job, or was performing not well at all. But there's a new emerging trend. It might be short term, but real estate values are so high that, you know, we're seeing young families choosing to buy cottages, you know, 45 minutes to an hour out of the city, and say, that's my principal residence, and I will now rent in the city to, you know, to get to your place of work easier. So it's interesting versus paying too much in the city and renting a cottage in the summer. So, you know, now driving 45 minutes to Keswick or Barrie, 50 minutes is not a real big challenge. So that trend is growing strong. It may be short term, but I'm seeing young families moving north. And you're also seeing the subdivisions all around, you know, these northers popping up everywhere. So, you know, the province is open. Go ahead.
We should ask Steph, because she just bought she bought a cottage several months ago. So Steph, why did you buy your cottage?
Yeah, it's a place to go. It's beautiful up there. So, and I'm not the only one. Like, things on my lake are flying off the shelves when they get listed. So, yeah, the cottage market seems to have not suffered at all.
Very, very hot. You know, sorry, Jesse, go ahead.
No, it talks to what you were saying earlier, is are people actually going to move out of Toronto because of the mobile workforce? And I think it's a contentious subject, because I don't believe as many people are going to be not working in commercial buildings as some might. Even though my office might not ever go back to an office for as long as we expected in the past. It might be a few days a week versus 5 days a week. Right. But are you seeing that, Alex? Are you seeing people move out of Toronto at this point, and maybe cottages being hotter?
I think what is happening is people are trapped in the city. I'm seeing that they are not traveling. They're seeing they want a place to go to that's their own. They're not sure if they're going to be able to travel in Christmas time. And so they're turning inside and spending more money on themselves. And I think that's what is creating that cottage rush, because they're looking for entertainment in a sense. By the way, just before I forget, you know, the three of us are talking where our money, where our money is where our mouth is. So Barry just bought and sold a month ago, Barry?
Correct. Yeah.
So he believes in this market. I listed my house last night, and I'm going to be selling and buying in this market. And Steph bought a cottage a few months ago. So here are three real estate brokers, all independent brokers, by the way, who are putting our money where our mouth is. Just before I forget.
Totally. No, and it's so important to say that, right? Because we work in the industry, so we always want it to be hot, but it's been such a hot industry for 30 years, and it doesn't seem to be slowing down. And this leads to the last question, and we'll try to be about a minute each on this one, because we'd love to get your final thoughts on this. Is that there's so much media, there's so many different things to read about the state of the market, when to buy, what I should know about mortgage rates, home prices, all these things. So Steph, I'd like to start with you. If you had to give one piece of advice to someone right now who's looking to potentially buy or sell, what's the one thing you think they should know?
Yeah, don't try to predict the market. Look at your personal situation. If it's the right time for you, if it's the right time for your family, don't overthink it. Now is a good time.
Thank you. And Barry?
Not so different than what Stephanie said. Ignore the predictions because they are usually wildly wrong and they vary from day to day. Rely on the stats of the time. They're readily available. You can pretty much Google anything and find out a trend.
Great point. And Alex, I'll let you have the final note.
Toronto is growing. It's the fastest growing city. We don't have enough land. People want their own place. If you can afford it now, I mean, when I bought my first house in 1981, I got a 14% mortgage rate. And I fell on the ground and I kissed the ground that I had such a low interest rate. So today's interest rates are a joke. It allows people who are out of the market to get back in on the market. I think we're seeing them take advantage of it. A house is where you're going to live. You're going to enjoy your life. You're going to bring up your kids or just have barbecues by yourself. It's not a financial decision. It's a lifestyle decision. And if you want to own a house, this is a good time to do it.
Awesome.
Now, conversely, if you ask me, I want to sell my house today and move into a rental, should I do it? I would say I wouldn't recommend it. I think if you can hang on and wait, then I think sometime in the future, whether it's 6 months or a year and a half, you will do better. And again, that's my belief that today is a really good time to buy.
Awesome. Well, thank you to all three of you. It's such insightful information, and all of you are very Googleable to talk to after.
Googleable. Is that a word, Googleable?
I hope so, or else I just made something up. But the best thing about them is they're available for questions and to help in your home search after. And we're very thankful to have them, and obviously for the UJA. Thank you for having us all on today. The UJA has been really important to all of us. I worked with RENA for 7 years, and the UJA was so impactful in everything that they had to do there. So thank you to everyone for joining us tonight. And please, if you're interested in donating to the UJA's 2020 annual campaign, now is more important than ever with what's going on in the world. So please visit jewishtoronto.com/donate. We'll also be posting a link in the chat, and we love your help, and I know they love your help. So I appreciate you all being here today, and have a great rest of your night.